Namaskar. Hello and welcome to P Guru's channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. This is a rare occasion where in the morning we try to go live with a very accomplished guest, Pandit Satish Sharma. You've met him, you've known him on P Guru. We've been together on P Gurus for about 4-5 years now, I think. And I still remember the first time I had an interview with Panditji at his house in London. And now he joins me and we talk about a very major development in the Cisco Caste Discrimination Case. The judge has ruled out keeping the name of the prime accuser anonymous by calling that person as John Doe. What are the implications of this? And I'm not a lawyer, but I can see, I've had many patents. I've had to go and defend myself for my inventions. So I kind of know what happens, but I'm not a lawyer. So don't take my word for it and think that this is what is going to happen. However, between me and Panditji, we have more than 50 years of experience with the British legal system, which is what is there in US in a modified way in India and so on and so forth. So now let's welcome Pandit Satish Kumar Sharma ji. But before that, please like this video. I've sort of hassled Panditji to get up in the morning and be on the show. So please give us some consideration, give us some encouragement, like this video, and also if you have not subscribed, do subscribe to our channel. Here comes Panditji. Panditji, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel.
Pranam ji, namaskar, Jai Shri Ram to you. Sriji, a pleasure to be with you as always. You've just invoked a memory that the first time we met was at my home in London and the subject was caste. And here we are, sort of the other side of a global pandemic, as it's been called. And what are we going to talk about? Another development in this subject of caste. Thank you for the invitation to speak, and thank you for picking up this event and identifying it as being a very significant event. I think as time goes by, people will look back at this and study this as a moment when things changed dramatically. And I'd just like to share with you a few reasons why. You remember when we spoke at CastCon? We held that conference in California, and the intention was to talk openly on a major platform about many of the issues that had been concealed or that had been pressurized into not being aired and discussed. And one of those at CastCon was the idea that Sundar Ayerji and his family had been publicly humiliated. I would go as far as to say that his reputation had been crucified for over a period of 3.5 years. And he'd never really had an opportunity to say to his accuser in a court of law that this is not true. You know, the principle of justice is, especially in the British system, is the opportunity to stand in front of your peers and address your accuser and refute his evidence. And yet the whole CRD and Cisco case was created around preventing that from happening. One of the fundamental parts of it was that even the identity of the person who accused Sundar Ayerji of having discriminated against him in his professional capacity, even that identity was concealed. And you will recall, I suppose that this case, initiated by John Doe, who I think the world now knows as being Chetan Narsude, this case that was initiated by him and really picked up by California CRD, this case is going to become quite a pivotal case. You know, it's a case where allegations were made that the Hindu community was systemically racist, that there was this terrible bunch of non-Dalits who spent their daily lives going around working out pernicious schemes on how they could discriminate against their fellow Hindus. And a catalyst, a tsunami of anti-Hinduism, Hinduphobia, Hindumesia, call it whatever you wish, was really unleashed. That tsunami, I think the person who initiated it all will be looked back on and identified as Chetan Narsude. Now, I can say his name. And I mentioned the CastCon conference. Op India, one of the portals in Bharat, they did a lot of background research on the case itself, on the documents which Chetan Narsude's co-litigants had presented, and even on the basis of all of the information that they had submitted into court, you could trace exactly who this person was. There were so many identifying markers. And Op India did a lot of background research. And even during Caste Con, they had identified that this individual was Jitin Narsude. And so Jitin Narsude, I think, will be identified. And it's a tragedy for this young man for having embarked on this unwise course of action, but he will be identified as the person who really unleashed and was the catalyst for the unleashing of a huge amount of anti Hindu rhetoric, hatred on a similar sort of a scale to what we're witnessing unfold with regard to the Jewish community. Entirely innocent members of the Jewish community being pilloried and being hounded, being denied their human rights. Jitin Narsude, I think, was the person who unleashed this and gave it formal permission for people to do the same. Seattle happened because of Jitin Narsude's case. You know, the CSU issue suddenly arose out of Jitin Narsude's case. We have Harvard, I think, Brandeis, Brown, so many places, all because of this Jitin Narsude's case. And what's happened yesterday is that a judge, in the looking at the CRD and Cisco case, has refused to allow further anonymity. So an appeal had been made that John Doe's identity should be protected because otherwise he would be targeted by these vicious Hindus. And he and his family were under a great deal of duress and pressure and feared for their well-being. This was the story that had been put forward in order to secure this anonymity and protection. Well, the judge was very revealing in the remarks that the judge made. But and we'll have a look at those in a moment. But the upshot of it was that the judge said, no, I don't believe that you have grounds. You've not submitted any evidence to support your allegations that you are endangered and that violence could result. And so has been rejected. So we can identify Jitin Narsude as being the person who initiated the CRD, Cisco, Sundar Iyer litigations.
Thank you so much, Satish ji. And viewers, I did take a chance I did take some time out to look up Chetan Narsude's LinkedIn profile and also some of his patents. He has about a dozen patents. He has done well in life. He's a multimillionaire from what I can gather, looking at all the different companies that he was part of. And also, in my conversations with Sundar Iyer, who was supposedly his boss and also his classmate and also the man who got him into Cisco. I mean, the thing is, this. I don't know what really drove Chetan Narsude to do this kind of stuff. After all, he has been, so lucky, or I shouldn't say so lucky. He's been so accomplished. He's done well in life for himself. What was the need for doing this thing? I don't know who talked him into it. Basically, he also his stance now completely disgraced. Also, Panditji, there is a small observation that I'd like to make here. Once you take away John Doe and put the name, in my opinion, again, I'm not a lawyer. I should not take that this is what it is. In my opinion, then it becomes the case of an individual against an entity, no longer the community versus another religion. See, this thing goes away. And if still city councils, if still universities continue to do this thing, shame on them. These people think no end of their intellect. Read the judgment. Read the judgment. Understand. This is one individual having a grouse of whatever it is. I can't imagine. He could not even convince a judge that he needed protection. He goes back. I mean, I saw the 8-page judgment, Panditji. The reasons given for him to stay anonymous are frankly frivolous. That's the reason why the judge rejected it. I have to say this thing, Panditji, in my life as an inventor, I know the kind of, I used to be hauled over the coals. Did you really invent this thing? Oh, really? You did this thing. When did you do this thing? But I don't see it in your engineering notes. I have been subjected to so much scrutiny because of my skin of my color. Okay, I don't complain about it. I take it with my, it comes with the territory. I know as an immigrant in the United States, and I'm sure you will agree with me on this, Panditji, I have to jump twice as high to get half the respect. This is the way it is. Yep. I'm not saying this as to complain that I've been discriminated against. This is the way it is. Deal with it. That's all. So, your thoughts?
Gee, you raised a very important issue, and that is that this is an individual with a grouse. Right? The court papers establish. In fact, I'll read a little quote from the judgment. The court does not find the evidence submitted, including the declarations, sufficient to show the necessary likelihood or severity of harm to warrant allowing Doe to proceed anonymously. Doe does not describe any assaults, any acts of violence, or even threats of violence towards his family now or ever. Now, isn't that an extraordinary statement? And yet, nothing has changed between when the case was initiated and now, 3.5 to 4 years later. And so, what evidence did the court look at when this was initiated? Did they even look at the evidence, or were they carried on this wave of rhetoric, this emotional, dramatic delivery? You know, the tears, the crocodile tears that have come through from the Equality Labs people, etc., etc. Did that actually influence the court? We know that it influenced a number of universities. You've mentioned a couple, and when we think back to the Dismantling Global Hindutva conference, that too was carried on the wave of rhetoric created by this particular allegation and this particular case. And so it's crystal clear that there has been an incredible miscarriage of justice. And I do feel for him because, you know, when he goes to work today, when his family look at him, when his colleagues look at him, they're not going to be able to look at him in the same way that they looked at him a couple of days ago. But this is entirely of his own doing. And it's no different to what Sundar Ayerji has had to bear for the last 3.5 years, 4 years, and his family have had to go through. It's no different to the multiple engineers of Indian origin in Cisco and other places who suddenly found themselves going to work and colleagues were asking them, I'm sorry, what caste are you? Oh, you're part of that crazy Hindu bunch, aren't you? Who have this terrible Hindu caste system. It's unraveling as we fold, as it's unfolding in front of us. It's unraveling as we observe it. But there is another phenomenon which I think is really worth highlighting. We have got here now evidence of a case in which a person has chosen to identify as a Dalit, and we know that the word Dalit is not from the Hindu pantheon, it's not from Indian history. It's a fabricated word created at a particular time in order to deploy an account of oppressor, oppressed, and to create that divide and rule rhetoric. We know that it emerged at the end of colonial times. But this person has chosen to self-identify as an oppressed. He has created a straw man identity, which has then been placed on an innocent person who self-identified as being an atheist. And yet, despite all of that self-identification and the creation of a straw man, we have an innocent person and his family and an innocent community who have been literally pilloried in the public square for a long period of time. And the reason I mention this, I'm speaking to you from New Delhi, and I've been here for quite some time. As you know, I do a lot of work here and a lot of research we're conducting here as well. The fruits of which will be announced at CastCon in London, which will be held in the early part of the new year. And it's evident that this is actually a toolkit which has been used to attack non-Dalits by scurrilous, reprehensible members of that community for personal gain. There is such a body of interest of the SC/ST Act having been used in a manner which is a denial of justice, and a manner which is abusive, and a manner which destroys completely innocent people. And on a larger scale, it creates friction in the community where friction did not exist prior to that. You know, we are seeing, imagine what has happened with Sundarji and the CRD, a tiny little state in America, right? And we've seen the impact of it. Now imagine that having been successful, that the CRD had managed to get this into legislation, SB 403 had been passed, and then amplify it onto a much larger national scale, so it covers a whole country, and then impose it and apply it for a period of some 200 years. Okay, that's where we are in Bharat. We have this strategy having become enshrined into the daily polity. Politics is going along on this basis. Relationships are being destroyed on this basis, on exactly the same Chetan Sude principle of leveraging process to inflict punishment. And this, I think, is a moment where we can all reflect on this and decide how we want to move forward. I know that there are many members of the Hindu community who want to see this caste consciousness dissolved so that a child born in a Brahmin family today, labeled as a Brahmin, and a child born in a Dalit family, labeled by politicians and society as goals as being a Dalit, that those two individuals can experience the benefits of meritocracy. They can achieve everything they aspire to achieve. That there should be no distinction between those two children. And so that the nation can also benefit to the maximum from their hard work, their efforts, their creativity, their desire to contribute, their desire to have a fulfilled career. You know, the only way forward is to get to that situation. And I think Jitin Nasude unwittingly will be used as a as an example of how this toolkit destroys the lives of those who are attacked, but also the lives of those who do the attacking, using justice to inflict injustice.
And very true, Panditji. And also, if you look at how the CRD, the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party people are the ones who funded Equality Lab, so I can say that with some certainty now. I've done a episode on this, viewers, did the research, showed you who were the people involved. In fact, the link goes all the way back to Obama administration. And so this is a very viciously planned thing. Alphabet Soup was very much in the play. They carefully chose this individual as the face of this whole thing. I'm talking about Equality Labs and Tenmori Soundararajan. And this person is so smart that she thinks that last names identify the caste, not knowing that her own last name is used across the board. So this kind of ignorance, idiocy, continues on because they don't care. They think that they have got the CRD completely interested. For somebody's individual growth, that person thinks that they have a case, and let's go and sock it to these guys who seem to be overachievers. And it just took off on its own. Now, what is happening? My understanding, Panditji, and you can update me. My understanding is Cisco has not agreed to give even a token bone as a measure to CRD, saying that, okay, we will do something in agreement. There is no negotiation. Cisco seems to be sticking to its guns. That's what I see it. The two main people who are defendants have already been let off of the case. Only CRD versus Cisco was remaining, and Cisco is not yielding ground. And now with this, CRD should not be wasting my taxpayer dollars to fight this case. Fold in the towel, take your losses, get out and do something else. That's what my 2 cents to CRD would be. Satishji, if they don't do this thing, there are serious consequences I see coming down their way. My 2 cents, Satishji. Please go ahead and you tell me what you think of it. Yeah.
I would say they're $2 rather than there's a lot in what you have said. And it should be noted as well that there are consequences for pursuing frivolous litigation. And this is going to be such a blow. This judgment is a part of the CRD versus Cisco case. And so this is going to be a major blow to the CRD. And I really think it's time that heads should roll. We know that the lead persons responsible for this nonsense, they've already been dismissed. But that's inadequate. There is an unbelievable amount of harm that has been done to the individuals who have been dragged through court. When you have individuals of the caliber of Sundarji and Kompalaji and people of that sort, they're making a massive contribution to society, to entrepreneurship, to creativity. And for them to be gagged, handcuffed, and literally isolated for a period of 4 years, the damage is very, very significant. And I think that Cisco, as you say, from what I have also understood, is that Cisco are holding on and saying, no, we're not going to abandon this. We're not going to compromise. There is a principle. The Cisco reputation has been harmed, and CRD, I'm confident, are going to pay dearly for this. But it shouldn't just stop there, IRG. You know, there is there is a larger momentum behind this. I was watching the Senate hearings only yesterday, where a senator asked the presidents of 3 Ivy League universities whether it was possible for them to give a yes or no answer to the simple statement that demanding the genocide of a people is included within bullying and harassment. Now, a normal person on the street who's not overly educated, whose brain hasn't been overly cooked, would say, well, yes, of course, that's that's bullying and harassment. But the three of them were unable to make that statement. And that is such an indicator of the depth of the rot within the intelligentsia and within the academic sector within the United States. And it's not just, obviously, it's not just in those three Ivy League universities. One of the other things I noticed, though, was the president of one of the universities, when she refused to answer a yes no question and was offering platitudes and policy statements, which they always trot out when they don't want to admit to a fault, she had an unbelievably contemptuous smirk on her face, and it was
Yes,
picked up by.
yes, yes.
And I recall seeing that contemptuous smirk amongst the expressions on the assembly members in California in various hearings where they actually dismissed the petitions of people like Milind Makwanaji, um, uh, who has expired, and
Yes,
remembered.
yes, yes. It has already claimed one life. Yes, yes.
Yet they were
Sarji,
dismissed.
you're talking about the smirk on Senator Aisha Wahab's face. I will never forget it. I'll never forget it. The deck was loaded against no to SB 403 was winning like 4:1. And they had bussed in people from far off lands to come and say yes to SB 403. It's all a made up case. I don't know who was foolish enough to fund all this stuff, but anyway, be that as it may, the thing was that this was the most ludicrous display of trying to, game the system. Also, Panditji, we caught at least 5 people doing multiple rounds. They'll go out, come back again, join the line, come back in, and say with a different name that I am this thing, and I say yes to SB 403. Even this was absurd. I mean, anybody watching that video could have found out. But anyway, I'm sorry to butt in butt in for so long. So I yield the floor back to you. But please finish your thoughts, sir.
No, that thought that there is an element of hatred when somebody smirks in a public place, a person in a position of public authority, and they smirk and reveal the contempt they have for the individual in front of them. That is contrary to the principles of democratic governance. And those people should be required to declare conflict of interest. There is clearly a conflict of ideological interest or a conflict of religious interest, and that should now be pursued by the Hindus who are in California. There is another sentence I just want to share with you, which I think our viewers will find very interesting with regard to the global allegations that are being made against Hindus. And this is again from the judgment. If claims of a lack of promotion and name calling from decades ago, coupled with generalized statistics of continuing and sometimes violent discrimination, were sufficient to allow a person to file anonymously, there is scarcely any discrimination case in which a plaintiff could not meet the burden to proceed under a fictitious name, as racism and anti-Semitism, to name just a few examples, are all alive and well both here and abroad. That is an incredibly potent statement, because what has happened in Bharat is not only have allegations been made against people going back potentially millennia. The allegations is that there were atrocities committed millennia ago. And so today's people somehow have to bear the burden of those atrocities if they existed. And there is what I've always referred to as a completely unstable foundation for a legal action, and that is group guilt and ancestral guilt. In Bharat, there have been identical cases to this particular case, where allegations have been made without evidence, and merely historical evidence, which has got no basis in fact or record, has been put forward as justifying that a sentence should be granted, that a judgment should be passed. The whole of the SC/ST Act is fundamentally a denial of the human rights of indigenous people of Bharat. And the day is coming when it will be scrutinized on a global platform, and the Bharatiya state will be found to have been practicing nothing short of religious apartheid against its own indigenous people. And this sort of language is going to help to promote a sense of justice so we can deal with this issue and move beyond it for everyone's advantage. So I think it's a great day. You know, when we last spoke, I was just leaving the United States and we got the great news that SB 403 had been vetoed by the governor. Today, I've got my bags packed. I've been in Bharat now for many weeks, and I'm just about to leave. And we receive another piece of good news.
Keep
So,
traveling,
although
Satish ji. Keep traveling.
keep leaving, leaving wherever you are, leave quickly. But I just wanted to give a shout out to a few people who've been responsible for getting us to this stage. You know, when when a group of Hindus came forward and decided to challenge the state, a lot of Hindus were saying, no, 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 don't do this, right? It shows us in a bad light. We shouldn't be confrontational. We don't want to upset political relationships. All sorts of things were levied against a small number of people who said, no, this is wrong. It has to be dealt with. And yourself, I count in amongst that small number of people. P. Gurus has always been on the front line of bringing the news without particularly paying attention to what the consequences may well be. And so my first shout out is to yourself, Shiri. You know, I really appreciated you giving me a platform to talk about these issues such a
Thank you.
long time ago. And my pleasure. And there are other people. When we decided to hold the CastCon conference in California, you'd be amazed at the resistance that we actually had. There were a small number of courageous people who said, we're going to step forward and underwrite this because it's for the benefit of our community. And also because our children's future will depend upon this. And they were courageous and they insisted on not having their names disclosed because they couldn't withstand the nonsense that was going to be directed. They were fearful that what happened to Sundarayad would also be directed towards them. When you have a hostile state, that fear is rightly justified. But there were a small number of people who did step forward also and helped us to organize that conference. And so, without naming names, I just want to say a big thank you to the Nari Shakti group in California, because today's result is actually a significant outcome which came out of their contribution. And they'll know who I'm referring to. But there was one person who said that she would also stick her neck above the shoulder, above the parapet, and expose herself to all sorts of criticism. And she really helped to put the conference together and became the face of it. And that was Rita Gotham and Castgate. The cast files is worth having a look at. This document that we've referred to today, she's actually managed to secure it, and it's available to anybody to have a look. All they need to do is to have a look on cast files and download the link and satisfy themselves as to what the truth of this issue is. Onwards and upwards. We're, as I say, we're moving forward to CastCon London, then we'll move forward and do CastCon in New Delhi and Bharat, and hopefully we can all together now come and make a case which will help our community to come together to reconcile this issue, to recognize the mischief makers who want this to continue, not for anybody's benefit except their own. And let's try and deal with this. So at the end of 2024, maybe December, 12 months now from now, you and I can be sitting back, looking back at a year, and it's the year when the caste conflict within the Sanatani family diminished to such a degree that we're confident that it would disappear. And dissolving caste consciousness is really what we have to work on in 2024. So Shriji, once again, and P. Gurus, thank you so much. On your behalf, I'm going to shout out to the watchers. Guys, if you're not following, if you're not supporting, and you're not subscribing, and you're not proliferating this unbelievably important mechanism and channel that we have, then really you're not helping our own cause. So please, that's the minimum you can do. Do support them, and let's spread this news and build this channel so it too has 1 million, 2 million subscribers. We're going to need it next year. Thank you very much, Sriji.
Thank you so much, Pandit ji. And viewers, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. This particular video is actually coming live on not only YouTube, but also on Facebook and LinkedIn, because LinkedIn is where most professionals are following. So they will be also watching this video. And the intent is very clear. This is, I'm determined that truth shall be, known to everybody. They need to know what kind of vicious individuals there are in the society, despite having achieved a fair amount of success, want to try and make a lie and then try to make it stick by lying even more about it. Thank you once again, Satish ji, and viewers. We'll see you again very soon. Namaskar.
Namaskar ji, Jai Shri Ram.
Jai Shri Ram.